please hit that subscribe button.
Hey everybody.
Better suited to win the Stanley Cup this season. If you are new to the channel, the Washington Capitals, the Boston Bruins.
Watch out, and he scored! And we're live. Hey everybody, it's prediction time here. My final predictions for the 2020 Stanley Cup. I know earlier I said I was going to wait until after the play-in rounds to do full playoff predictions once we knew what the actual matchups would be. But honestly, the play-in round has practically become part of the playoffs. So I'm just going to go with my picks for them for that round versus my round robin seeding picks and start with that and then predict all the way through. No longer the way too early edition. These are my official picks for the playoffs this year in the 2020 Stanley Cup. So before we get started, I just ask that you please subscribe if you are new and hit that like button if you haven't already. Those thumbs up really go a long way in helping the channel and are much appreciated. But let's get right into it here. As you can see in the Eastern Conference, for the round robin, I have Tampa Bay finishing as the 1 seed. Washington is the 2, Boston is the 3, and Philadelphia is the 4. And in the West, I have St. Louis is the 1 seed, Colorado is the 2, Vegas is the 3, and Dallas is the 4. Coming out of the play-in rounds in the East, I have the New York Rangers being the lowest seed, playing the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Toronto Maple Leafs being the 2nd lowest seed, playing the Washington Capitals. The New York Islanders playing the Boston Bruins. And the highest seed out of the play-in rounds, the number 5 Pittsburgh Penguins, playing the Philadelphia Flyers. In the West, I have the lowest seed being the Calgary Flames, coming out and playing St. Louis. 2nd lowest, Vancouver, playing Colorado. That would be one hell of a series right there. Nashville, 2nd highest, playing Vegas. And the highest seed out of the play-in round, Edmonton, playing the Dallas Stars. So that sets the stage for the normal 16-team playoffs. These would be the matchups. And obviously, as we know, it's going to be reseeded every round from there on out. But let's get into picks here. I'll start in the Western Conference since I normally do East. I'll start out West. And in the first matchup, 1 versus then 8 reseeded. St. Louis versus Calgary. St. Louis is just the better team there. So I'm going to move St. Louis on for sure. In the the next matchup, Colorado versus Vancouver. This is going to be a high-flying, young gun, fun series to watch if it happens. Be absolutely incredible. I'd be watching as many of those games as I can. But in the end, I certainly have Colorado moving on and winning that series. Vegas versus Nashville. That would be the 3 versus 6 matchup. I see Vegas winning that one. I think, Nashville can certainly get past Arizona in the play-in round, but it ends there for them. Vegas, I think, really is a dark horse team and a true cup contender this year with that roster and that goaltending. So I have Vegas moving on there, which means they would either play Colorado or St. Louis. We wouldn't know exactly yet. Well, actually, we would because both these seeds are lower than Vegas. So they would play Colorado in the second round. And I have the Edmonton Oilers beating the Dallas Stars and moving on to play the St. Louis Blues. I think Edmonton is a team, obviously, with a ton of offense with McDavid and Draisaitl leading the way. I think they're much, much improved defensively. They added forward depth at the trade deadline, bringing in Athanasiou, bringing in Tyler Ennis. This is a team that I think could actually make some noise in the playoffs this year. And I can't see Dallas scoring enough goals to keep up with Edmonton. No matter how good Dallas's defense is, Edmonton's going to find a way to score. I can't see Dallas being able to score enough to keep up with the Oilers. Moving over to the Eastern Conference, the 1 versus 8 matchup reseeded would be Tampa Bay versus the New York Rangers. And as much as I love the Rangers going forward and I love their future, and I think they're going to be a legitimate Stanley Cup contender a couple years from now, I've got the Tampa Bay Lightning in that one. Tampa is just the much better team at this point, the much more experienced team. And again, I think Tampa is coming back with a vengeance after what happened last year. Everyone talks about, oh, Tampa chokes, Tampa chokes. They swept in the first round. They're going to be coming back with a real vengeance this year. They are going to be upset, and they're going to be ready to ready to play, I think, and they're going to be a team that I really see going pretty far in these playoffs. Next matchup is Washington versus Toronto, and this is an interesting one because this is one that I really think could go either way. This would be a very tight series, very long series. Both teams can score. A lot of it, I think, would come down to goaltending. How well does Braden Holtby play for the Capitals? How well does Freddie Anderson play for the Toronto Maple Leafs? But in the end, I am going to go with the 2-seed Washington Capitals. I think they get it done, and they'll be the team that moves on to play in the next round. And Toronto, once again, going home early in the playoffs and not able to make a deep run. With that defense, even with Muzzin and Riley back healthy, I just don't think they are defensively sound enough to win playoff hockey. Next matchup, we have 3 versus 6, Boston versus the New York Islanders. And I've got Boston in this one. I really can't see Boston losing to the Islanders. Islanders are a team that Boston in general just does well against. And I feel like out of any of these, obviously, if I'm a Boston fan, I'd be perfectly okay seeing Toronto, just given the history. I'd be perfectly okay seeing the Islanders. That's a team that I think that Boston would probably have success against. What I don't want to see is the New York Rangers. I think that would be scary given their speed. Or the Pittsburgh Penguins. Again, that would be a scary matchup for the Bruins, I think. But Islanders are a team they can beat. I've got them moving on. And the 4 versus 5 matchup, I think this is the year that Philadelphia gets it done. I really do think that this is the year that Philly gets it done and is able to get by the Penguins and go deeper into these playoffs and make a run here towards potentially going, conference final or Stanley Cup final. I think they get by the Penguins. Philly had such a great year this year. They're a really, really good team. And I think this is a year that they could really make some sort of run. Moving on now to through the second round. So who goes to the conference finals? We'll go back to the West. And this is where I think the train stops for the defending Stanley Cup champions. Yes, I have the Edmonton Oilers moving on to the conference final. I really, really think the Oilers can beat the Blues. St. Louis is a team that, won last year. We know how hard going back-to-back is. We know how few teams go back-to-back. The only team that's been able to go back-to-back since the 2005 lockout, and really since the turn of the century into the 2000s, is the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2016 and 2017. No other team has been able to do it. LA won multiple Stanley Cups, never back-to-back. Chicago won multiple Stanley Cups, never back-to-back. The last team to do it before Pittsburgh was the Detroit Red Wings in the late 90s. It doesn't happen very often. So I think the Blues aren't going to go back-to-back this year, and they get knocked out in the second round by Edmonton. And then I think as high as I am on Vegas this year, I think the buck stops there with the Colorado Avalanche, and Colorado moves on to the conference final. It's time for the Avalanche to make a deep run. A couple years ago, they made the playoffs. They lost in the first round. That was their first time back into the playoffs, and they gained a lot of experience. Last year, they knock off Calgary in the first round, but lose in the second round to San Jose. More experience for this young team. Now, after a couple of playoff losses, I think it's time for Colorado to make a serious deep run this season, and I've got them in the conference final against Edmonton. And then over in the East, we got two huge matchups here. Tampa Bay versus Philadelphia and Washington versus Boston. I can tell you in the first one, again, I'm high on Tampa Bay into these playoffs. I am very, very high on Tampa Bay in these playoffs. I think they are going to be back with a vengeance. The whole choker thing, everyone said that about Washington. Everyone said that about Washington until 2018, and they slayed the Dragon in Pittsburgh in the second round that year, and they went on to win the Stanley Cup. And everything that was said for the 12, 13 years before that about how Washington just chokes in the playoffs was just thrown out the window. This is going to be a redemption year for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I've got them moving on to the conference final to play against the Washington Capitals. Listen, the Boston Bruins do not beat the Washington Capitals. Since 2014, or including 2014, from then until present, the Bruins have a grand total of, I believe, 2 wins, or 2 or 3 wins in total against the Washington Capitals. They just don't beat Washington. The Washington's a team that doesn't matter what the rosters are, who's playing, who's in, who's out. Washington always beats Boston. I cannot see the Bruins winning a playoff series against them. I've got Washington moving on, and then we have a rematch of the 2018 Eastern Conference Final between the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Washington Capitals in the Eastern Conference. Over in the West, we have 2 teams that haven't been to a conference final in a long, long time, in the Colorado Avalanche and the Edmonton Oilers. So kind of same old same in the East, with Tampa Bay and Washington being at the top. Newcomers in the West as far as the conference finals are concerned. And that brings us to the Stanley Cup Final. Who is going to make it to the finals? That is where I have Edmonton running out of ability and gas, and the Avalanche move on to the Stanley Cup Finals to play against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Yes, I think Tampa gets it done this year, makes up for that loss in 2018, and is able to move on to play the Colorado Avalanche. And that's your Stanley Cup Final in 2020. The Colorado Avalanche from the Western Conference and the Tampa Bay Lightning from the Eastern Conference. But who's going to win? In the end, I think it's a redemption year for Tampa Bay. Here they go. Make that a little bigger. Colorado, I'm sorry. You're a very, very good team. But in the end, I think the Tampa Bay Lightning are your 2020 Stanley Cup champions after an abysmal playoff showing last year, getting swept out in the first round as the best team in the league in the regular season. They come back with a vengeance. They come back with just a fire burning in them, and they find a way to get it done, and they win the Stanley Cup this year. And finally, like Washington in 2018, they finally get rid of the choker label in Tampa Bay. So that's obviously just my opinion. Hockey's impossible to actually predict. I hope people realize that. We have no idea who's going to win any of these series. It could any single one of them could go either way. We've seen major upsets in the past. I don't have a whole lot of upsets here, other than maybe Edmonton going as deep as I have them going. But I hope people realize that these are just my picks, and I don't have anything against any of these teams. That's my predictions for this year, and we'll see how it turns out. Might be really right, might be really, really wrong. We have no idea. So we'll have to wait and see what actually happens, but I'm picking Tampa Bay this year. I think it's a pick that a lot of people are going to scratch their head at, and everyone loves to make fun of them about what happened last year, but I think they come back with a vengeance and get it done this season. And it's time. It's time for that team to finally go all the way. And they've got the talent. They've got the goaltending. They've got the defense. There's no more excuses for the Lightning. It's time for them to get it done. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.